getting my my building plans kind of getting towards finalized. So anybody that's interested in, I'm looking to design kind of like a functional live workspace for 6 to 10 people. So yeah, anyway, doing that. And yeah, that's pretty much what's going on, and still just trying to enjoy some summertime and yeah, connect with all you guys. Hi.
That's great. Thanks. And Bradley.
Yeah, so I am at the end of my sort of recovery period after putting in 2 really long grants with the Air Force for some of the tech that Turnigan Heavy Lift is working on. And I get 3 more days of downtime, and then I'm back into the SBIR process for National Science Foundation and some energy storage tech with them. So that's mainly my summer, still getting outside and tending to the garden. Just got tomatoes up in the greenhouse last night, so trying to create some compartments around that. But other than that, just building and grant writing.
Nice. And Bradley, if you have any particular resources you found useful regarding early, phase 0 or phase 1 SBRs, would you drop that in the chat? I've got a request from Nick, who's running McKenna Marine, who's looking at phase 0. I've turned him on to Patrick Simpson, of course, as kind of one of the go-to guys. But if you know of anybody else that would be a good resource following up on your email, I'd like to pass that on to him. Thanks.
Yeah, I send everybody I talk to Turbo Cibber. They're a 10-person startup right now. Basically doing Cibber applications hand in hand with companies that need the help and the guidance, like I did. And it's pretty cool. They take 7% of a phase 1 if you want to have them write the grant. But that means that if you don't get the grant, you don't owe them anything. So I think that's a much nicer model for getting especially new companies into doing phase 1s. And in some ways, I think that help is missing up here in Alaska. So I hope there are some local players that jump into running not just one-on-ones, but cohorts of companies through Cibber.
Right. Thanks for that. Is that Tubo or Turbo?
Turbo. So it's their VC pun on TurboTax. Essentially, rather than have to go through the 80 forms you got to fill out to submit an SBIR, you go through a kind of TurboTax style process, entering in what your tech is, what your innovation is, submitting patents, submitting PowerPoint decks, and then their team kind of puts that together in the form the government wants it to actually issue the grant.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm going to put in the link that you pasted. It was Tubo Cibber. And that's okay. I'm putting the R in there. We're good to go. Andy, what's going on with you today?
Not a whole lot. I've had a busy week this week doing, more personal stuff. So my significant other got a award for, it's the FAA's Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award, which is given to pilots who have safely flown for more than 50 years. So he's been a pilot for more than 50 years. And so that was a big, we've been waiting for this event for a couple of months. It was supposed to happen at the trade show and it didn't. So, so that was kind of a big deal. Actually, it's a very big deal. And then we had a celebration of life for somebody else on Wednesday. So it's kind of like up and down. And then I've been focused really heavily on learning how to use a program called Camtasia to do some create content for teaching that's more interesting than just a narrated PowerPoint. So my focus has been pretty much into tech this week. And I haven't really been looking out at the rest of the world a whole lot. So actually, for the last, I just kind of feel like I'm regrouping to myself, recovering from the semester of being, you know, really intensely active. And as a introvert, I think I'm in recovery mode, a prolonged recovery mode here. So I kind of feel like I don't have a whole lot to contribute right now, but I want to keep continuing just to stay, you know, fresh, I guess. So that's about
great.
it.
Good, thanks, Sandy. If you get a chance, would you drop a link to that Fantasia program into the chat? And then also just to let you know, and you might have seen it, I'm keeping you kind of connected with my discussions with APU about the third and Ingress site and other stuff like that. And just trying to keep you in the loop as a point of contact for the Alaska Pacific University folks that you might interact with more down the road. Megan, what's going on with you today?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm remote right now, and so I'm going to finish my video off here. I think to preserve some bandwidth. But this is my first meeting. Kitty Farnham actually invited me. I'm newer to Alaska, kind of boomeranging back after leaving after high school. Recently moved down to Homer, and hopefully this summer I'll be up in Anchorage. I work in the nonprofit space, kind of working across the United States, workforce development and technology. But just really excited to learn more about what y'all are doing here in this group and see if there's a good way for me to kind of plug in and help support it.
Great, thanks. And your connection was a little broken up there, but I think we got the basic pieces of it in terms of your connection to Kitty, your nonprofit work, and the technology side. I'm glad you can join us, and I enjoyed the little bit of back and forth with the introduction, the email. I'm glad you're on here today. Thanks. Margie, what's happening with you today?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Doing well. Been pretty busy with ADA has allocated $1.5 million for seismic planning and permitting in the refuge. So was actually talking with their communications director yesterday. They're putting out a public, what do you call it, competitive bid for improvements to their website. So if anyone has ideas about what should be included to make ADA more transparent and publicly accountable, they're actively looking for what should be included in that public bid. And I don't know, maybe some of you guys want to work on that bid too. So keep your eyes for that, and I'm dropping links to a really powerful op-ed that Nari wrote, and as well as the ADN coverage of that decision that was made this week. Can't hear you, Kai.
We lost your audio.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to cut down the backup. No, I appreciate you, Margie, bringing the ADA thing up. You know, I have to exercise some restraint with them. They have so much potential, but that seismic thing that they announced is just kind of doubling down on their strategy, and I'm disappointed. But at any rate, we won't go off in the weeds on that, I guess. Let's see, Nita, so glad you could join us today. What's going on?
Good morning, Kai. Well, I'm in my living room and it's a little humid. It's cool out, but I think we might even have some summer thunderstorms, so you're going to miss out. This group is pretty new. It seems like every time I log on to the AlaskaV3 group, there's new people that I haven't met before. So my name is Mita DeWitt. I am a Tlingit traditional healer. I'm also an independent contractor, and I work in several arenas that kind of intersect, and that's education, traditional health-based practices, policy, human social services, and so I work with the Wilderness Society, Alaskans Take a Stand, Stand Up Alaska, the Third Avenue Partners, and I'm in a PhD program at the moment. So Yeah, I don't know. There's so many projects to catch up on, I guess. One notable one for this group is Margie and I are working on a traditional economies paper, and that's going right now. And we have a few more interviews to get through. And so I'm excited for that, the outcomes of that.
Great, thanks for joining us, and especially I just was on the phone again with somebody this morning sharing about the interest I have in the paper that you and Margie are working on, and the brief introduction you guys gave on that Alaska show that you're working on. I think it's a really exciting piece of the puzzle in there. And then there's also somebody who's on the phone at this point, 3316. I'm not sure who that is. Can you say hello and help us match up the phone number to who you are?
So the anonymous number that we have is one. There you are.
Oh, yeah, that's me. That's me. Okay, this is Pascual. I thought definitely my number is not showing there. It's just anonymous. So yeah, this is Pascual, and I'm on the phone today. I'm in the middle of two things at the same time, but again, I didn't want to miss this meeting. And well, this week has been a mix between what we usually have in Alaska, which is enjoying the outdoors and more work, which is really good. For those that don't know me, my background is in engineering, and I'm basically bridging some gaps between industries like engineering and services. Sometimes the weakness of one is the strength of the other one, and I bring the approach from the engineering point of view to those service companies. So that's what I do it in a consulting basis. And this week has been pretty busy when it comes to business, so that is good. I don't have any news to report this week, like something that I've seen outside what we already talked about. Just reinforce the idea that we are seeing a lot of people moving up from the lower 48 to work from Alaska in a remote status. So that's good news. That also means a lot of talent that is arriving, new ideas, fresh ideas, different points of view. So that's good, exciting news for me. Yeah.
Good deal. Thanks, Pastor. I think I've got everybody there. I wanted to mention two things today. One is I got off the phone earlier this morning with Emma Sweeney, and she is engaged during this summer as a student working with one of the oil and gas industry associations in Alaska, and I missed pieces of it in the beginning of the conversation. But she's working with a group that is exploring kind of what some of the future alternative energy issues are in Alaska and the energy transition issues. And I was absolutely fascinated to see her surface. She apparently saw something in our Facebook posts and got interested in what we're working on, and wanted to jump on and pick my brain for almost an hour this morning on what we're doing and how we're going at it. She had a lot of interest in both how we're looking at the energy transition issues as a component of the future economy, as well as concern and questions about how we'll be reaching out to all of the states to involve them in this discussion. And Margie, I'm hoping that I can follow up, and I want to introduce you to her. I think that the work she's doing and the connections that she has with this student research opportunity will be something that you might enjoy connecting with, and that you might be able to both assist her, but you might also find that her research will be something that might complement some of the work that you're doing. And I certainly want to make sure that her research and the interviews that she's going to be doing around the state incorporate anything you'd like to steer her towards in terms of your regenerative economy work at that point. So you'll see an introduction coming there. At any rate, it was just interesting to see somebody reaching out. She's, I think, got some sort of Alaska connection, but she's over on the East Coast right now, just kind of reinforcing that, the little pieces of what we're doing that are filtering out into the world, but also that we're interacting with more people that are interested in the issues we're looking at and trying to figure out how to work on these issues of the future transition. And as I emphasized with her, you know, our approach so far has been to try and look a little more holistically at this idea of a future economy, but not independent, and trying to strengthen the traditional economies of Alaska at the same time, and recognizing the value that they have. So anyway, look for more from her. I hope that she'll be able to join us in the future. The second thing, you know, that's a fair question. I don't know, Margie, in terms of the relationship there. I don't think so, because I think she's actually got another E in her name in the last name that might be unique to that. The other thing I wanted to point out, in case you missed it, I may have sent it to most of you in the background, and I realized I probably got some wind noise. I'm sorry, I may try and shift around because is this Oregon 2050. I was blown away to run into this just in the last couple of days, and to realize this group in Oregon is doing something very similar to what we're doing in terms of trying to look out to 30 years from now in the future for Oregon. And I would encourage you to check out the information on this more from the standpoint of seeing how they have parsed up the process. They are really looking at kind of a three-stage process. It's not that much different than the four approaches that Pasquale and Sarah had originally structured into the website that look at the process of curating and collecting information, and then connecting and collaborating, and then creating resources there. What I would note is that their approach is being driven by staffing and funding from somewhere. I'd like to learn to organize their project through the university and through their urban studies program. So it's a little more of an example of a little more formal process, probably much more well-funded. But on the other hand, it's one that to me typifies the traditional approach of doing long-range planning, which is to have somebody organize it and do it for the community and involve the community along the way. But at the end of the day, it's more of a product that's created rather than a process that changes people. And I had this discussion with Emma this morning that I thought, you know, I wanted to make sure I shared, which is that in my mind, the value of this process is not that we will ever create a final plan that goes on a shelf to collect dust, but these planning processes, in my mind, for long-range community capacity building are really about changing people's view and narrative of the future. And it's the involvement that people have in the process that creates the value. And some of the pieces along the way, but it's not about creating a final planning document that everyone looks at and oohs and ahs at all the pretty pictures. It's about the discussions, the conversations, the steps along the way that change people, change their aspirations, and change their ability to think about how they make the next decisions that are in front of them. So anyway, I encourage you to be thinking about that, as well as checking out this Oregon 2050 resource that I think is useful. Okay, I took longer with that than I probably should have, but life goes on. I wanted to jump into this SBIR application, but let me pause for a second and say hi. I think Laura, you jumped in there. You want to say hi and give us a quick update on how your Founders project is going and anything else going on with you?
It's going fine. I don't think I should take time because I'm too late jumping in, and it's, if anybody wants to join, just email me and I'll put you on the list. I don't know. Do you want me to, I don't want to take time for that.
That's fine. Thanks for that. So any of you that are interested in a Founders Circle, Founders Meetup group and that process, reach out to Laura for more information. I think the first meeting is on Sunday, maybe, and is moving along. It's something she's really taking a lot of initiative.
It's basically kind of every other week. So that twice a month, there'll be one meeting. One will be in person and one will be by Zoom. And the first one is on Sunday at Jasmine's place in Mountain View. If anybody's interested, just email me.
Cool, thanks. So let's jump over here for a second and let me share. There's a link in the meeting notes that also has a link to the folder, but I'm going to drop a link into the chat right now that is a link to the draft PowerPoint presentation. And this should allow everyone to open it and to edit it. And I want to take a second to take a look through this. I'm just looking to see if I can move a little bit out of the way of some of the wind that I'm afraid is probably adding some noise to what I'm doing. Let's see if this will be a little bit better. So the grant opportunity is due, I think, on July 2nd, and it's got 2 tracks in it. One is really focused in on acceleration programs that have a focus on minority populations and indigenous rural issues. There's a second track that is defined as a catalyst track. And this is for organizations that are interested in developing some sort of approach towards helping bridge together amongst multiple entrepreneurial support organizations. They refer to them as ESOs. That's kind of a vernacular that I had to go look up again. And helping bridge connections between those. And Ryan had brought this to our attention, Ryan Witten, as something that might be a good fit for AKV3, looking at our intent to help bring about more conversations about the next economy of Alaska, and being some sort of bridge or catalyst to creating conversations that bring together the different support organizations. And for those of you that may not know all of these, we have at least 4 main organizations in Alaska that are out there. There's the Alaska Ocean Cluster that's doing blue economy work. There's Launch Alaska that's doing energy related work. There's Health Tie, which is doing health tech related work, and Spruce Root that's doing rural sustainability economic development work. And there's others coming along over time. There's another group currently working on an alliance coalition type of structure for entrepreneurial support organizations, as well as the work like Margie's involved with the Fairbanks Climate Action Committee and whatnot. So this is potentially a way for us to think about what AKV3 might look at doing that takes us another step forward in time. The process for applying is relatively straightforward. It is due by July 2nd, so there's not a lot of time. It is open to any organization. It doesn't require any match, although they like matches. It doesn't explicitly require strong endorsement or support from organizations, but that obviously provides a lot of strength to the application. So we are currently qualified to be able to apply for this as we're set up right now, which is basically just an Alaska business entity. But we're not nonprofit, we're not for-profit, we're not anything fancy, but we exist at least legally. So we could apply for this, and it would involve putting together 2 main things. One is a slide deck, and they've put together a prescriptive outline of what the organization should submit in these slides. And then you also have to put together, I think, about a 90-second video that accompanies the application in there. And I think the intent when Ryan brought this forward is that Alaska's future economy and the discussions around it might be something that we could apply as being a catalyst organization to do essentially what we've been doing, which is reaching out across multiple organizations and trying to foster more discussions and support collaborative projects like the writing contests that we did, like maybe the summer discussion circuit. My thought was also potentially to specifically use this funding to help energize that challenge reverse pitch type of process this fall, where we could be specifically curating, communicating, and incentivizing individuals, school programs, and other organizations in the community to engage in the challenges that matter to creating the future Alaska we're looking for, and through that, creating the economy that we want to have. the other final thought, and I want to pause and get your feedback and thoughts on this, is that it's become apparent to me that the work we're doing is resonating, it's getting interest and support, but it's also limited right now to the scalability of all of us having lots of other things that we're doing. And the capacity to be able to do more is going to be, on one hand, based upon the commitment and the involvement of lots of people like you, but also it will also, in terms of scaling to communities around Alaska and facilitating more kinds of projects, will be struggling to scale on that. So I think it's a good application for us to engage in. I think even if we don't get a really strong application in and don't get it, I think it will still help us think through what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish and who our partners are and how we want to engage them. So I think it'll be valuable for us to work on this. If we want to pursue this, it's going to mean basically sharing this, collaboratively working in this Google Doc over the course of the next week to pull it together. Somebody maybe helping with production of the video to move the thing along and trying to pull it together. So let me take a deep breath and pause now and get your thoughts on this, suggestions or feedback if maybe you've looked at this a little bit more and have some thoughts on it.
On the video, what kind of video are they looking for?
So in the folder, and I'll share the link to that in a moment here, what they say is, and I'm sorry, what I'm referring to, one of the documents in the folder that I've shared is an outline of what is supposed to be in the video. And so I've just created a shell for this. But what they're saying is the video is not more than 90 seconds. It describes how the applicant is uniquely qualified to address the needs of entrepreneurs it serves currently and implement its proposed SBIR Catalyst plan. The video must be posted to a public site, and it's part of the application process in there. So pretty broad. They're, I think, just looking to put a face behind the PowerPoint with that focus on why we're uniquely qualified to do this work and support the rest of the plan and the PowerPoint.
Okay, so that's what Camtasia does. It is a video creator with multiple tracks, so you can do audio separate from video, do like a narrative separate from the video. So if you or anybody comes up with some photos or video clips or anything that they think represents the organization, I can easily pull that together into a 90-second video.
And Kai, this is Mita. I have videography equipment, not the high end, but pretty standard for documentary and like this kind of use. So like GH5 mirrorless Lumexes. So I can do video. I also have drones and 360 cameras. So if there's anything very specific that you want to get, I can do the video. I just don't have time to do the editing. So it's pretty awesome that you have time to do editing.
Okay. Other thoughts about the application? What you might suggest the application might focus in on, or objectives that might provide some general framing for what we're doing? You might look at slide 2 that tries identifying what those objectives are. If any of you want to start banging away at any of this, you're welcome to just start typing, and this is a draft slide deck that I sent out, and the intent is just to let everyone throw some thoughts in there. But other ideas and suggestions?
I guess my question to you, Kai, would be, on the partnerships front, you've been working in this ecosystem longer, I think, than just about anybody on this call. I had a brief conversation with the CEO at Turbo Sibber about this and some other groups that have been working in the SBIR space for a while. And they basically said that slides 3 and 4 are going to be absolutely critical, are going to clinch whether or not it's done or not. So if you look on there, I mean, it's basically a series of questions that are really hard ones that we'd have to answer as a group before we do kind of the work of the application. You know, mainly centered around who are the STEM and R&D partnerships to kind of usher these companies through the process. So you mentioned Launch Alaska, Alaska Ocean Cluster. You know, I just submitted an STTR, which is a university partnership R&D application. And I'm doing that with San Diego State University, not because there's nobody at UAA and UAF that could have done it with me, but because the speed at which those organizations moved to partner was slower than San Diego State. And so this, you know, is a real opportunity here to finally get all of these different parts of at least the tech area of AlaskaV3 working together. So I think my thoughts are, the first thing is, you know, reach outs to Peter Webley, Mark Billingsley in Fairbanks, and then others down here about, you know, actually having set meetings and figure out if they have bandwidth to be a part of this. Because that's going to be what I'm told the government will score. They want to know that there isn't just a company, but that there are academic and commercial partners working together to create a program for companies. So just a few thoughts to put out there and hear yours.
That's helpful. I've just crudely jotted that down on the slide 3 in there just to capture your thoughts. Thanks for sharing that. And I appreciate that issue also about speed being an issue. Certainly what I've run into, everyone is kind of maxed out and seems to be not able to respond very quickly. And I don't know whether that's a siloing issue or whether that's a capacity issue.
I'm just going to jump in and say, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand the concept that we're shooting for. And it's probably just because, you know, I hopped on late, but also because these SBIR contracts, these SBIR grants have always been really confusing to me. So I don't know if that question needs to be answered. I'm just telling you, I don't quite get what we're talking about.
I can relate to that, Laura. They're super confusing. I had 7 different federal registrations that I had to go through and 10 more for my company just to have the right to submit a proposal. So it's not just you, it's just incredibly confusing. It's getting better. There's a new unified federal system that's come online in the last month for SAM registrations, and it's login.gov is making everything a lot easier, so you don't at least have like 20 different accounts. But it's really hard to get spun up on just what you need to do to do the submissions. And then on top of that, like once you get there, then you actually have to prepare, you know, as a company going for a phase 1 to make the argument you should get that money. And it's completely different than a kind of angel conference VC style pitch. It's totally, the considerations are different. NSF, for example, doesn't want low risk. They want high risk. If it looks iterative, if it looks like something that can be done with just commercial and investment, they will reject your proposal before even reading it. So it's a very different and very confusing process in a lot of ways. And I think that is, you know, at least the idea of what this could be, or someone up here should be doing, is creating a way to make that process easier for companies like yours and mine to understand what is this and how do I engage with it.
I think that's the difficulty for me is it's hard for me to envision how how I fit in, or how, or who would fit in maybe, or how one fits in. So probably part of that is just listening and reading the supplementary stuff that you guys are providing.
So let me throw out a couple thoughts here, and I'm on slide 2 for the moment, because I think, Laura, you're articulating a really important issue, and I'm hearing it at kind of 2 levels. One is, what specifically is AlaskaV3 trying to do, and what does it look like? And vis-a-vis then, what are we asking for funding to actually accomplish? And I hear you also, and Bradley's comments, kind of at a higher level, looking at kind of the whole process of this application and how the SBIR fits into the future of things. I think both concerns are valid and reflect this kind of somewhat opaque path that we're trying to sort out at this point. What I'd like to suggest is kind of 2 thoughts. One is, in terms of the SBIR funding pathway, in general, I view SBIRs, these small business innovation and research type programs, as kind of the first step, that if you can get some of the initial ones, it kind of unlocks your relationship with the Economic Development EDA organizations and other grants and opportunities down the road, by virtue of having completed the first early grant cycle to create capacity to go for resources to do bigger things. So to me, this is kind of a toe in the water process where we put together a PowerPoint, a video, we get a little clearer on what we are trying to do. But in doing that, if we were to succeed in this, it begins the process of being able to get bigger support down the road. More specifically to what I'm going to suggest we specifically put in this application in terms of what we would do with $150,000 related to our AlaskaV3 approach, is to specifically go after being a catalyst to bring together statewide entrepreneurial support organizations and others working in the STEM technology area to specifically bring visibility to the challenges that matter to the future of Alaska. I think that is one of the unique roles our organization could play, which is having that lens on what is the future of the state, but what are the challenges that become opportunities that are the next steps that we could take that might bring together folks like Alaska Ocean Clusters and Launch Alaska, because they might see those challenges as ones that they could link and leverage their resources and their programming. And I'm going to suggest that what we would do is specifically work on the curation of those challenges, the reverse pitch idea that we've kicked around, the conversations around those challenges, and work to bring visibility to those challenges in a way that would then motivate and potentially even incentivize students in senior project classes, student researchers at the university, entrepreneurial startups, as well as the Launch Alaskas of the world to engage in those challenges because they understand them better, they see them as more investable, they see the partnerships that could be there. And I'd suggest that we go after developing the programming around doing that over the next year and seeing what we can do to help the state see the value and the opportunity in working on these challenges because of the opportunities, solutions, and the new economy that can be created out of those challenges. Thoughts on any of that? Yes, no? Want to tell me I'm full of malarkey or want to reframe that somehow?
Well, what you just said made me jump back to our conversation a while back about sort of consolidating the curricula for entrepreneurship so that all of the universities have access to Alaska-based resources for entrepreneurship classes. And I don't know, maybe this is something that this could go for as well, that could then bring attention to not just the UA universities, but everybody, other schools, high school, universities that are working on entrepreneurship, and show the state that it is actually a thriving community versus right now where they're only focused on the big the oil and all of that big stuff. So that's what jumped to my mind anyway.
I like that a lot. I think that's a nice way of framing and also integrating the educational aspect of the program. Still, bringing that clarity, the challenges, but also bringing more visibility to the resources and understanding of those that would then infuse themselves into the curriculum and classes being taught. That's powerful. I've added that on the slide too.
I'm really curious because I know so little about APU, but if there's STEM activities going on there as well that might be a fit for that kind of program.
Andy, can you
No
speak to that at all in terms of STEM?
Yeah. They do have, and I'm not familiar with the programs outside of the business program, but I know we do have quite a bit of ocean-based research going on. And there's also a lot of outdoor nature research going on. Global warming is a big area of interest for us as a university. And of course, indigenous lifestyles, bringing in the Arctic innovation or Arctic, I don't know, my brain isn't functioning very well. But we are members of the Arctic. Maybe you can help me here, Kai. It's like a consortium of Arctic of universities that are situated within the Arctic, and they kind of share information back and forth on what how the Arctic impacts everything, business and everything else. So there's a lot that APU is involved in that is sort of on the sidelines a little bit. We don't have a tech program per se, but we do have a lot of other ways of looking at the world that's a bit different. So.
Yeah, that's. I put the link into the University Arctic in there that you're referring to. It's a powerful program to realize, and circumpolar organizations are working together a lot more than sometimes we see. Laura, you had a question?
The part that I understand about this project is the concept of visioning a future and looking for obstacles that present challenges or that present opportunities, and that part of the project. I can understand that. I understand also the idea that in order to get there, you want to get a collaborative effort going. And this would involve expansion or partnerships with a variety of different entities. The part where I get confused is, we have a bunch of organizations that purport to do that. And so those things, many of those organizations already have mission statements that are in alignment. And I think that's part of what you were saying before, is that part of the next step or this SBIR application would be in sort of raising profile or I don't remember how you said it exactly, but making raising that up so that there could be more productivity, or however you want to call it. But I can't get away from this one thought that just keeps bombarding my head, which is every innovation and every business and every one of these partners, they need money. That's the bottom line. Everybody needs money. And I'm just thinking about that, the existing infrastructure that exists, like a lot of that is focused on early stage businesses, which is great. Like I love the idea of, you know, improving, you know, the innovation coming out of the university systems, all that sounds fantastic. But at the end of the day, it's really just sort of about money. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, am I crazy?
Well, so it might be worth doing like a 45-second like overview of CIBR. So basically, money is a big part of it, but really it's about commercialization through the federal government. That's what this is about. So where venture capital is concerned with immediate return on investment and control, the government is a benefactor that is concerned with neither of those. What they want is a specific research and development objective to come out of that. You know, essentially what the proposal is for in this is guiding companies into that process so that they can make the federal government, the National Science Foundation, the Park Service, the National Institute of Health, their first customer. And from that, prove to the commercial world, to the angel investors of the world, that the thing really can exist, that it's hard, but you can do it. And look, we already have our first customer, the government. And so that's kind of the process.
That helps a lot. Thanks for that clarification. I think that's a really well summed up. That helps a lot.
Cool.
Thanks for the question and response. I'm trying to put just a couple of brief notes in there to try and capture that, because I think that's an important piece of that. The other, you know, thought that I have, Laura, on that is, on one hand, yes, it is just about money, but I also naively would like to believe that this is also an issue of helping people figure out how to link and leverage the money they already have and the resources that they can get, versus all of the silo efforts to solve problems right now. No, go ahead.
The one group that I didn't see mentioned anywhere on like the slides or in the discussion is a financial partner. In other words, you know, like banks, maybe it's that simple, like having a partner in that collaborative group that can, you know, really educate people and enlighten people more about those processes, could be an asset to the larger collaboration. And I didn't see that anywhere, and I don't normally see that as a part of this type of envisioning type project. So throwing it out there.
I've added that note on there. I think you raise a big point, and it's why, you know, earlier you may have caught that I mentioned this idea about creating visibility to investable challenges, because I think what you're touching on is an essential piece of this puzzle. It's not enough to just come up with wild ideas about challenges and opportunities and projects to work on and hoping somebody will work on it. It's actually about creating the lens of investability. What are the problems and why are they investable? That is, why is it valuable for someone to work on it? Because of maybe knowing how much money is already being spent on the problem, maybe because people know how much money is available through government financing like SBIRs and SDGRs. But that lens of investability, I think, is a unique piece of this puzzle that we can help people move past thinking that it's only about struggling to find money. It's actually about finding something that's investable, because my view of life in Alaska in particular is that there's plenty of money to do investable things. We've had no shortage of doing lots of stupid things in this state over the last couple of decades. It's bringing clarity to what is valuable and investable in terms of the future that I think we can work on. The other final point that I want to make, and I'll pause again, is that the work that I've learned about in Calgary has really been profound in my thinking, which is that as long as everybody is doing lots of good work independently, you never see the aggregation of the metrics and the results. So the money to do more of this innovative work is hard because everyone's kind of scraping for the little bit of money they can find. And when you can start aggregating the impact across many different organizations, you start realizing how powerful the combined impact is that is otherwise unseen. And that's what's happening in Alaska right now. We have no idea the number of startups that are being created in Alaska. We have no idea how many people are being employed by them. We have no idea the economic impact because everybody has their own little slice of life. CED is doing the, Upstart Alpha. Launch Alaska has PDP. The Center ICE has their student startups. There's lots of pieces, but nobody knows the total picture.
I would like to jump in with one thought after
I've got to hop off for another call. I'll catch up later. Good to chat with you all.
Good, thanks. And go ahead, Pascal, and then we will wrap up.
Yeah, really quick. When we talk about what AlaskaV3 is shooting for, I think the conversation that we are having right now is actually a good example of that. We are not tied to any specific organization that has to fulfill a set of metrics to determine success, and we can say whatever we think it's actually the problem that's happening in Alaska, and actually unfold all those probably hidden obstacles that nobody wants to talk about because nobody wants to wake up that monster, let's put it away, and actually provide those metrics and be more objective about the goals. I'm not trying to imply that they are not, the actual organizations are not being objective, but we can be for sure more objective, or at least not have any of those restraints. And if it comes to the point that, hey, we are actually not producing that many startups as we would like to think, we will be able to say without any problems or thinking that we're going to lose a founding or, we're upsetting somebody else. And I think that's a good value because if somebody's trying to make something happen here and they are not aware of the actual real problems or challenges or opportunities, they're going to run again into the same issues that some other people have been. So I think that's part of the value that we are providing.
Okay, thanks for that. That's good. Well, we need to wrap up. I have recorded this. I'll push that out as well as with the notes. I'll encourage all of you to reflect on this, maybe throw some notes into this slide deck. Don't be afraid of putting notes into this deck that you think about, or put comments in there, do whatever, but just, to the extent you can engage, that would be great. And we'll continue to kind of jiggle this thing through the week with the idea of trying to get something pulled together for next week to look at and maybe finalize. I appreciate the offers from Margie and Andy to help with the video. I'll do a little more work on trying to propose an outline of that content and some suggestions on how that might come together. But if anybody has any, resources or ideas over the next week, please just jump in. Nobody is going to be, this all will happen because we all just kind of jump in and take some initiative on that. So we'll go ahead, Andy.
A real quick, since we only have 6 days to do this, put a request out there to everybody in our group to list what role you play in the ecosystem, so that we have 90 seconds to say who we are, show pictures of the resources that we have to work with here in Alaska. But I think it's also important that we share the different walks of life that we all come from, and that we're not just one focus, but we come from a wide net of perspectives. So if we could all kind of gather that together, that would be awesome.
That'd be great. Thanks for asking. I put a note about that on slide 2 at the bottom about getting that list. If any of you can offer any of that information, again, you just have to take initiative on your own. We won't have the time to chase everybody, but if you can use the AlaskaV3 email, that's AlaskaV3 @gmail.com, to send any of that stuff. It'll all end up in one bucket that'll make it a little bit easier to find and manage. in that area to share. Or if you just want to drop it into the slide deck or into a file, it's in that folder. However you want to get it is all great. I appreciate all the support on that. Okay, well, we didn't get much on the summer programming. I know if you haven't already, please look for Sarah's email at the Doodle Poll. She was trying to collect some dates, and if you can follow up with that, I'll follow up with Sarah and look at what's coming out of that poll, and we'll continue to jiggle that along. And as always, your involvement in this is key. It's just all of us just kind of jumping in and doing that will get things moving along. So thanks for joining the discussion today. Any final thoughts, questions, or anything before we wrap up?
I like this discussion.
Each week they're always good. I never quite know what they're going to, where they're going to go, but they're always good. And appreciate everyone diving into it and just continuing to keep us alive and see where it takes us all. Thanks for joining us. Okay, we'll see you all next week, if not beforehand.